In this video, we're going to discuss graphing inequalities on a number line. So let's begin with making sure we understand what the difference is between these two symbols here. So this one here has the line underneath, whereas this one doesn't. That's the only difference. So what does that line mean? So you need to think of the x as all numbers. Okay, so this is saying all numbers, and since this is not, think of this like a Pac-Man symbol, it's going to what's more. So since this Pac-Man symbol, this inequality symbol, is not going to the x, this means all numbers that are less than 4. So I remember it as when this symbol like makes an L, that's how I remember that. I read that as less than. So it's saying all the numbers that are less than 4. So in other words, 4 is not included as a possible solution for x, because it says all the numbers that are just less than. So what this line right here means, all the numbers that are less than 4 or equal. So that's what that line right there means. It means it could also equal 4. So it has to be less than 4 or it could equal 4. So that means that the 4 is included. So that is the difference. So pause real quick and make sure you understand that when the line is there, I think of it as like an equal sign. So when it has the line, I think of like it has half of an equal sign. So that's how I remember that whatever this number is could equal x. When it doesn't have the equal sign, it means no, only the numbers that are less than 4. Okay, so now let's talk about how we graph on a number line. So when it doesn't have the line underneath, we're going to use an open circle on the 4. So when the 4 is not shaded, so this is not shaded, it means 4 is not included. X cannot be 4. And then we're going to shade the side where all the numbers are less than 4. So it'd be all of these numbers here. So again, we're shading the numbers that we can plug in for x. So for example, I could plug in 2 for x right here because 2 is less than 4. So you're shading the side where all the numbers are that can go in for x. Now, we can use an open circle or the other way of doing it instead, and you could put both, I don't mind, but instead of an open circle, the other symbol we use is a parenthesis. So a parenthesis is used to show that the number that it's on is not included. So we can use an open circle or a parenthesis, and an open circle and a parenthesis mean this, that number is not included. Okay, now when we want to include that 4, we're going to shade the circle in to show that that 4 can be a solution, because all the shaded region shows where the solutions are. Okay, and then again, we still shade this left side here because it shows where all the numbers are that can go in for x. So this is saying 2 is less than or equal to 4. Yes. So we use a solid circle, or instead we use a bracket. Now the bracket or the parentheses should be facing towards the shaded side. So if this side over here on the right was shaded, our bracket would go like that instead. Okay, so again, oftentimes I have students that say, wait, I don't understand, like, what is a bracket versus a parenthesis? And this is what it means. So a solid or a bracket in a problem means that that number could be a solution for x. It's included. Okay, so next let's go ahead and talk about interval notation. So we discussed that the shading on the number line, the shading on a number line indicates the number the variable can be. Okay, so when we're writing our solution in interval notation, we always are going to go from the left side, so the negative side, to the right side. So we always read graphs, whether it's a number line or on the coordinate plane, we always read it from least to greatest. So from the left side to the right side. Okay. We're going to use parentheses always around infinity. And the symbol for infinity looks like a sideways 8. Okay, so when we write our solution in interval notation, we need parentheses when we use an infinity symbol. So this will all make sense here in a moment. Then we're going to use the union symbol. And the union symbol looks like a horseshoe or a U. When there is an interruption or a gap in the number line. Okay, so again, I'll make that make sense here in a moment. Let's just take some notes right now. Okay, and then as we mentioned up top here, we said that you're going to use a parentheses if the number has an open circle, because it means it's not included, and you're going to use a bracket if the number has a closed circle. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice this. So what we just took notes on here is if the problem says write the interval notation. So we just talked about how to do that. So the shading shows where all the answers are. So interval notation uses a comma, parentheses, bracket, numbers, infinity symbol to write this solution. So instead of saying x is less than 2, so this would be how to write it in set builder notation. Okay, it doesn't want that. It asks us to write it in interval notation here. So what we do is we're going to go from left to right. So you're going to look at the graph on the left, and you can see it keeps going and going. This whole side here is shaded, so it's going to keep going and going and going and going and going on the left. So that's when we use an infinity symbol. And then we're going to put a negative in front of the infinity symbol because it goes infinitely to the left. All the numbers on the left are going to be negative eventually there. So again, the negative just means the left side keeps going and going and going. It doesn't mean that they're all negatives, because these ones are positives over here, the 1. And then we wrote here that we always put parentheses around infinity. So we're going to put a parenthesis right there. Then we're going to put a comma, and then we go to the right of the graph, and it stops here at 2. So we're going to put a 2. And since we have an open circle, that's why we're going to put a parenthesis right here. So again, this is interval notation. It says the same thing as this. It says the same thing as this. It's just a different way of writing it. It's just saying that x can be any number that is on the left of 2. And then this means not included. So in other words, it means x is any number less than 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue trying this. So let's take a look at this one here. So we always go from the left to the right. So on this problem, on the left of the graph, it starts at 2. And because this is solid, we're going to use a bracket. So we're going to put a bracket, and then we're going to put a comma. And then after the comma, we write what's happening on the right side. So on the right side of the graph, it keeps going and going and going and going. So we're going to put infinity. And then a parenthesis always goes around infinity. So again, this is just saying all the numbers are to the right of 2 and including 2. So again, I like to think of the bracket like it looks like an equal sign right here. Like these two pieces of it looks like an equal sign. So that's what helps me remember that the 2 is a solution for x. So if I had to write this in set builder, I'd write it x such that x are all the numbers greater than or equal to 2. But again, we're practicing interval notation. Okay, so interval notation, we go from the left side to the right side. So as we go from the left to the right, it's going infinitely to the negative side. All these numbers on the left here are going to be negative. So we put a parenthesis, then we put a comma, and then it stops here at -4, and 4 is not included. That's what that parenthesis there means. So I'm going to put a parenthesis there. And then there's a break in the graph. So we wrote here, use the union symbol, this symbol here, when there's an interruption or a gap in the graph. So we're going to use a union symbol here. Okay. Running out of room, it's a sticky note here. Okay. And then we continue going on to the right side. And then right here, this is a 2 and this is a 4, so we're going to assume this is a 3 right here. So then it keeps going, and I'm going to put a parenthesis and a 3 because this is not included. And then as we go to the right, it keeps going and going and going, and we always put parentheses around infinity. So this whole thing is our solution. So again, we always go from left to right. So if you wrote it like this instead, this would not be written correctly. If you flip these, it's always proper to write it from the left side to the right side. So we don't want that. Okay, so let's go ahead and try another example here. So we're going to go from the left to the right side. So -4. And we're going to put a parenthesis because that's not included, and then a comma, and then all these numbers are included, and then it stops right here at 3, and 3 is not included. So again, this means all the numbers that x can be are in between -4 and 3. And again, -4 and 3 wouldn't be included, just the numbers in between. Okay, let's go ahead and try this one here. So we go from the left to the right. So it's going to the left infinitely, so we're going to put -infinity. We always put a parenthesis around infinity, and then as we go to the right side, it stops here at 3, and that means it's included. So the symbol for included is a closed circle or a bracket. So we could have put a bracket here. So we're going to put a bracket here, and then we're going to use the union symbol because there's a space with no shading. So that means 3.1, 3.2222, all the numbers between 3 and 4 are not included, so we need to put that symbol there. And then it starts here at 4, and we're going to put a parenthesis here because that's what an open circle represents. It means it's not included. And then we put a comma, and then it stops here at 5. So this just means that the numbers that x can be are numbers in between 4 and 5, including 5, but not 4. And then we have another space, a gap, so we're going to put another union symbol. And then again, we keep going left to right, so we have a 6. And we're going to use a parenthesis right here because this means it's not included, and that's what a parenthesis also means. And then it keeps going and going and going and going. It's all shaded on this side, so we're going to put +infinity. So this whole thing would be representing what the numbers are that x can be. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this next one. Feel free to pause and try them on your own first. So from the left, it keeps going infinitely, so -infinity. And then it stops here at -1. -1 is not included. And then there's a gap, so we use the union symbol. And then 5 is included, so that's what that bracket means. And then as we go to the right, it keeps going and going and going. So that would be our solution. So if I asked you, give me a number x could be, it could be 9, it could be 7, right? It could be 5, not -1, but it could be -2, -6, etc., right? So that's what this is showing. All those numbers that are shaded are included. All right, one last one. So from the left to the right, we're going to put -2 with a parenthesis because this is an open circle. And then it stops at 1 and it's shaded, so that would be a bracket.